Morning, Darren.
Morning. How you doing?
Good, you?
Oh, not bad.
What you doing?
Hey, Darren.
Morning.
What are you doing with the fish this time of year?
We just got them. Everything's inside. We're just basically just, feeding them and selling a few for meat now. So.
The deer hunting doesn't
could
sound
be
exciting.
I've had better years. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the employees shot one 21 and 3/8 inside spread, 8-point, right back of the barn. Nice.
Wow.
And my daughter missed a giant, hit a twig with her crossbow. And she was all upset. Really big one. But it happens.
Yeah, better than wounding it.
Yeah, that's what I told her. I said, we'll put you in the same spot when gun season opens Saturday, then you'll get them.
Yeah, we just haven't been seeing much of anything. Not even hardly. I can't even shoot a doe. So just haven't been moving much.
Brian, what do you think?
Just got a text from Erica. Looks like she's got a couple of technical issues connecting.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have a quorum, so I think we can get started.
Yeah, I think we should.
We'll welcome Erica when she joins.
All right, sounds good to me. I'll call the meeting to order and do introductions, and I'll start with the voting members, and I'll call each name, and you can respond. Then I'll turn it over to Brian. Dale Stein, Chair. Darren.
Darren Hickling, voting member.
Dave. Yeah, got your. Dave, you there? You were a minute ago. Darren, I don't see your name.
Seemed to have lost his video.
Yeah, I don't see him now. Well, we got to hang on a minute till we get another voting number. Wait a minute. Lost his video.
You lost video too?
No, I got Dave on, but no video. Or at least it's free. What do you have for him?
Same.
Same.
Well, I can go. Yeah, I can go through, and Eric says she's making progress. I can go through and do a advisory member roll call, staff roll call.
Okay, go ahead and do that. We'll wait a minute then.
Okay. All right, moving on to advisory member roll call. Ag and Markets. Who from Ag and Markets is on?
I am here, Brian.
Tim Sweeney?
Yes, sir.
Hello, Tim.
Hello.
DDEA.
This is Chaz. I'm on.
Hi, Chaz.
Hey.
DEC.
This is Julie Verlinsky. Good morning.
Sarah
Morning, Julie.
Latessa.
DEC.
Sarah Latessa.
Sarah and Sarah and Nassim. Welcome. Thank you all. Department of State.
Good morning. This is Stephanie Wojtowicz.
Stephanie, welcome. Department of Health.
Morning. This is Paul Kaczmarczyk.
Good morning, Paul. Anyone from NRCS? Blake and I just talked, and he said he had a conflict today. Wasn't sure if he was going to be able to get anybody on the line. Cornell Cows. PCE. Student ESF.
Good morning. This is Steve Shaw.
Hey, Steve, thank you. How about anybody from NYACD?
This guy Ryan, I'm on. Thank you.
Hi, Scott, thank you. Okay, and moving on to staff. Victor?
Good morning, Victor Giacomo, Regional Field Staff for Western New York.
Good morning, Victor. PJ?
Morning. Hi, good morning, everybody. PJ Emmerich, Region 2 AEA.
Thank you, PJ. Ryan?
Hey, good morning, Ryan Cunningham, Region 4 AEA.
Good morning, Ryan. Ron?
Good morning, Ron Bush, CNP Specialist.
Good morning, Ron. Brendan?
Good morning, Brendan Jordan, State Committee, CNMP Specialist.
Good morning, Brendan. Greg?
Good morning, Greg Albrecht, CNMP Specialist and AIM-based Program Coordinator.
Good morning, Greg. Scott Fickbaum?
Yeah, here. This is Scott Fickbaum, Region 3 AEA. Thanks, Brian.
Good morning, Scott. Jennifer Clifford?
Good morning, Jennifer Clifford, CRF Program Manager.
Good morning, Jennifer. Ben Luskin? I know Ben is planning to be on. Sometimes he has audio issues. We'll come back to Ben. Bethany Bizdu?
Hi, everybody. This is Bethany Bizdu. I am the Ag Non-Point Source Program Manager.
Good morning, Bethany. Jason?
Hi, this is Jason Cocano, State Committee, Data Analyst.
Good morning, Jason. Tim Clark?
Yep, good morning. This is Tim. I'm the engineer for the State Committee.
Hi, Tim. Lauren Pazorski?
Good morning. This is Lauren Pazorski. I'm the EBN Program Manager.
Good morning, Lauren. And anyone else from committee staff? Okay. Dale, I believe Erica has joined us. You want to try the voting member roll call again?
Hang on, you can hear us. Hang on then, Dave. Yeah, I've been on the phone with Dave, and he can hear us and see us, but we're not getting anything from him. He's tried responding and not coming through. But I'll try. I'll do a voting member roll call again. Darren.
Yep, Darren Hickling, voting member.
Erica.
Erica Goodman, voting member.
Dave, can you respond? The issue is he can see us and hear us, Brian, but we're not able to see or hear him. I'm not sure enough about it. If you want to, we have enough so we can continue on for the moment. We can work on it and see what he can work on.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, we can continue on, and I'll try to give him a call, Dale, once we continue on with the meeting.
That's fine by me. Okay. Yep. We're reviewing approved minutes. Are there any additions or corrections, anyone? If not, could I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
I'll call roll call for yay or nay.
Yay.
Erica?
Yay.
Approved. Next is correspondence. Brian?
I don't have any correspondence today, Dale.
Excellent. We're going to move on to then climate resilient farming with Jason and Jennifer, please.
I can give the program status update first, and we'll pass it on to Jennifer. So there were no updates in the program status this month for CRF. There remains to be 14 completed contracts totaling $1.4 million. 57 contracts are active, totaling $5.9 million of state funding match. And there have been 2 cancellations during the history of the program, and still no contracts pending.
Thank you, Jason. This is Jennifer. We have 2 amendments this month for climate resilient farming. The voting members should have received the amendment packet yesterday for their review. And so both of the amendments are in Region 2. The first is Onondaga County. This is a round 2 project that is slated to end the end of this year. The time extension request is for 1 year to end December 31st, 2021. The district is requesting a 1-year no-cost time extension to allow the farm to complete the farm pond project. The project is expected to be completed this year, but the time extension is being requested to be precautionary in case of what the weather is not permitting for construction. The farm has recommitted to completing the project within the requested extension time frame. This is PJ's region, and he supports the request. Are there any questions for?
Yeah, comments, questions, anyone? PJ, any comments?
No, thank you. None at this time, Dale.
Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call. Erica?
Yay.
Darren?
Yay.
Approved. Next one.
Thank you. The next one is also from Onondaga County. This is a round 2. This was also supposed to end at the end of this year, and they are requesting a 1-year time extension to go to December 31st, 2021. The district is requesting the 1-year extension to allow the farm project to complete a farm pond, access road, pump, and critical area seeding. The project is expected to be completed in the spring. The farm has several large projects underway currently, and this is important to the farm, so they are committed to completing this project in the extension timeframe.
Comments, question, anyone? PJ, anything to add?
No, thank you, Dale. Nothing at this time.
Motion to approve?
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call. Darren?
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the only time extensions. And the only other update I have for CRF is that the Hudson Valley Carbon Farming Pilot Project, we had a virtual kickoff event this past week. That was very successful. Scenic Hudson helped facilitate and put on the virtual event. And we had Assemblywoman Dee Dee Barrett, Assemblywoman Donna Lopardo, New York Senator Jen Metzger, and Commissioner Ball all speak at the event, as well as Joseph Ancilli from Cornell, the Soil Health Lab, and he spoke about their the soil health characterization report that they have recently released. And then we also heard from Brian Skorlik from the Dutchess Soil and Water Conservation District, who is the lead district on that project with the 5 counties involved. So that was a kind of a kickoff event to just kind of present that it's going on over the next 2 years, and there'll be some updates and further outreach that are associated with that project. That's all I have for CRF, unless there are any questions.
Thank you. Brian, we'll move to the Upper Susquehanna River Coalition report. Brian, you want to introduce Wendy?
Yeah. Hold on 1 second, Dave. Okay, yes, hello. I'm sorry, I was on with Dave on the other line trying to get him patched through, but I can do that. Wendy, we're running ahead of schedule, so looks like you're ready. Appreciate that. So I'm pleased to welcome Wendy Walsh, Susquehanna Coalition Watershed Coordinator and Executive Director for the Tioga County Soil and Water District. Wendy's been kind enough to lend her time today to talk to us about all the incredible things that the USC have been doing, all the great work that they've been doing through the years, and 2020 being no exception. In 2020, the USC has been conducting innovative outreach activities, which has really helped to get the word out to partners in the public on projects, and also helped to educate partners in the public on environmental challenges and conservation solutions. So I'm pleased to have Wendy talk to the committee today and all of our partners on the phone, districts and others, on all the great things that the watershed has been up to. So with that, Wendy, the microphone is yours.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, hey, there you are.
Okay, sorry about that.
I can hear you, Wendy. No problem.
Okay. All right. Still getting used to all this virtual stuff. So actually my first presentation this way. So I appreciate and want to say thank you for inviting me to speak today and talk to you guys about the Upper Susquehanna Coalition and our regional partnership approach to conservation. I have provided the slides to Bethany so she could advance them for me because I have some internet issues once in a while and I didn't want to lose the slide presentation when I was going through it. So if you'll bear with me, I'll have to let her know when to advance. So I'm all set, Bethany. To the next slide, please. All right, so just a little bit of background because I'm not sure who's heard. I know I've never myself actually presented on the coalition to the state committee, so I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background on who we are. We are a coalition of 22 soil and water conservation districts. We cover both counties in New York as well as 4 counties in Pennsylvania. We have a watershed area of about 7,500 square miles. We are the headwaters to the Chesapeake Bay, and we primarily implement non-point source projects to address water issues in the watershed. So next slide. As I mentioned, the USC makes up the headwaters of the Chesapeake Bay, and as such, much of our work focuses on the EPA's Chesapeake Bay Tmdl that we are under. The USC has been New York State DEC's primary local partner since New York formally joined the effort to restore the Chesapeake Bay in 2000. New York's efforts to meet its Chesapeake Bay restoration goals rely heavily on the work of the USC to implement best management practices across a number of different source sectors to reduce pollutant loads and to collect data about BMPs that are implemented. Interestingly enough, New York makes up about 10% of the land area of the watershed, and we deliver 6% of the nutrient and sediment load. So next slide. Just a little background on the coalition. We've been doing this work for 25 years with our main driving force being our core mission, which is to protect and improve water quality and natural resources in the river basin, with the involvement of citizens, agencies through planning, education, coordination, funding, project implementation, while advocating for our water resources. The impetus behind our collaboration was meeting local needs, which ultimately translates into improved water quality at the regional Chesapeake Bay level. And we utilize an integrative multiple barrier approach for planning and implementation restoration projects in the watershed. This approach allows us to address issues at the source, across the landscape, and in the stream corridor, as well as programmatically. Developing this approach, we can increase success through smaller projects and help capture stakeholder interest by demonstrating progress through implementation. Next slide. So one of the key things for the coalition, as I mentioned, we started in 1992. And we started as a group of water quality coordinating committees working together on non-point source issues. So we primarily put together strategies and partnerships and ways to implement projects in the watershed. We worked on, or we were able to secure funding in 1996 thanks to Ag and Markets and New York State DEC through an EPA 319 grant, where we actually brought on our first watershed coordinator. And then at that time, Tioga County Soil and Water took on the administrative role and the function of the coalition. So we've been coordinating that work through the Tioga County Soil and Water Conservation District since that time in 1996 when we brought on our first coordinator. Next slide. In 2006, the USC transitioned to a coalition of soil and water conservation districts. And at that time, actually, the state committee, as well as the Pennsylvania Commission, signed onto our memorandum of understanding. This allowed us to kind of expand our framework and allowed us to go after additional monies at the federal level that we weren't eligible for just as a water quality entity. So again, I mentioned we have currently 18 counties and 18 counties in New York and 4 in Pennsylvania. We've grown over the years. We started at a much smaller number, but we now almost encompass all of the counties in New York. Our 3 focus areas are stream corridor rehabilitation, wetland restoration, and then environmentally and economically sustainable agriculture. And all the while, we try to keep developing programs and keep our eye on the ball in order to implement new projects. We try to look to see what the needs are locally. Currently, an example of this would be our buffer program and the emergency stream intervention work that we've done in the watershed. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more on the focus areas. While the individual soil and water conservation districts implement best management practices across a wide variety of land uses, the roles and techniques described have led the USC to focus on 3 core areas, as I mentioned. Each core area has a team leader and a coordinator to facilitate effective and efficient implementation within the watershed and across the basin. The team provides for a consistent, quality-controlled process that builds USC and partner capacity. These teams do, however, form planning, design, implementation, and verification of BMPs, as well as training and outreach. Building capacity at the county level has proven to be a key quality restoration, rehabilitation, and sustainability in our focus areas. So one of the things that's kind of interesting to me is that the USC utilizes that watershed approach to cross town, county, and state lines to implement meaningful projects in a cost-effective manner. And that's been kind of the premise for our work since we started. Next slide, please. So keys to our success, partnerships. Next slide. There's many, as you can see, and we continue to engage more. Next slide. We also realize that the foundation for our success is in achieving goals and accomplishments that are based on a unique relationship that our local member soil and water conservation districts have, both at their individual relationships with both federal, state, and local partners. That's been a real big reason for the success, being our local member counties. Also, coordination at the regional level has really helped the coalition be effective in our implementation. We try to secure and go after flexible funding opportunities to implement projects. We try to always base our workload on local needs, even though we do often have to realize we're dealing with the Tmdl and the Chesapeake Bay issues. And again, that regional delivery is really key to how we implement. And then the team development. So not only do we have USC staff that support work within those focus areas, but then we have district staff that also join those teams and provide support as needed and move throughout the watershed as that work is needed. Next slide, please. Some of our funding sources, traditional funding sources, and then for us are primarily through NRCS, the EPA, New York State DEC, Soil and Water Conservation Committee, and Ag and Markets, along with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. They support a big Chesapeake Bay program, so we try to go after funding as much as we can with them. Next slide. So some of the philosophies, obviously our core philosophy is we're here to implement. The USC tries to focus on soft practices in the watershed, such as doing planning, grazing, prescribed grazing plans, nutrient management, buffers, streams, precision feed management, and others. We try not to compete with local soil and water conservation districts for structural work, knowing that they have avenues to access funding to implement farmstead practices through Ag Non-Point Source, BRF, and others. We try to let the soil, we allow or let the soil and water conservation districts go after that funding rather than compete with them for it. We try to do stream work where we're doing emergency stream intervention along with training. We try to rehabilitate stream corridors, and a big project program that we have in our stream team is the Berm Removal project, which allows floodplain reconnectivity. Wetland restoration is another key, as well as protection with our wetlands team. We're constantly looking for funding opportunities to roll out new programs and continually to implement. And one of the things that we're really always trying to do is we realize and recognize it's important to utilize existing resources that are available in the watershed through other USDA or state and local programs. And so we try to just find funding sources that can either match those programs or fill gaps both technically and financially. Next slide, please. One of the things that we did just recently is we have added to our focus areas by developing a water quality program. This started through a pilot program in 2015 where we were primarily funding buffer implementation. We soon learned that implementing buffers in the watershed is a challenge with numerous obstacles that often discourage implementation. As we continue to focus on buffers to assist in our watershed implementation plan goals for the Bay, we realize that in many cases we have to fill other gaps or other program gaps, which is what we try to traditionally do, but also have to provide incentives such as prescribed grazing programs to implement practices on marginal pasture lands and incentives on cropland, ultimately to get buffers implemented. So we look to expand our buffer pilot program, and we developed it into a water quality program, which funds conservation work in all three areas across the watershed. With additional focus, we added in the wetland restoration and the stream corridor help. So next slide. So I'm going to go through a little bit on our teams and then also provide you some examples of the work that the teams do. You'll notice that a lot of the core concepts are similar across the team areas, which makes sense. We found an approach that seemed to work for us, so we tried to stay with it. So next slide, please. Our USD Ag team, we have an Ag coordinator that leads that team. We also have an Ag team leader, is Cortland County, Amanda Barber. She helps provide mentoring for our coordinator as well as input on programs, opportunities, and needs. We have 2 grazing specialists that cover both portions of the watershed, east and west. And then part of that team as well is our buffer coordinator and our buffer committees, but I'll get a little bit more detail on them as well. So what we do is we provide technical assistance, we promote collaboration between agencies, we try to build capacity in the watershed, again, to help implement projects as we move throughout the area and allow staff to move within the watershed and across county lines. And then we support specialized staff as needed. Next slide, please. So our main focus, again, is on those soft practices, grazing, fencing, stream exclusion, buffers. We try to educate in order to affect cultural change and how we manage our farms and throughout the watershed. We try to be cost effective when we're addressing pollution concerns. We're always looking for flexibility in our funding and try to also do quality assurance all the time with all of our programs. So we try to empower through education, training, and actual experience. We find, farmers talking about projects and programs firsthand with other farmers seems to be a very effective way of getting projects adapted and adopted in the watershed. So we're always looking at new scientific research and techniques and trying to make sure we adapt them into our implementation, all the while realizing we're trying to meet the needs of our local ag community as well as the Chesapeake Bay at the regional level. Next slide, please. So all of this, and I know I don't have to spend a lot of time on that, but our core ag program falls under the AEM umbrella. AEM is the overarching program for the USC Ag focus area and team. Member counties support technical staff that work on conservation-related issues through AEM funding provided by the state committee, as well as our efforts in this meeting the local needs in the regional watershed plan is primarily based on voluntary efforts, which is kind of the core concept behind AEM, which is really important. Most of the work that we do, even though we're under enforcement action through a Tmdl, is on a voluntary basis through the AEM program. So we do everything from planning to implementing, and then the education and outreach components. Next slide. Another key component of our ag program is actually doing the data collection and verification. For the Chesapeake Bay Tmdl program, it's not enough just to say that we are putting practices on the ground. We have to verify that these practices are continuing to meet standards and are being operated and maintained. So each district puts a lot of time in with tracking practices and then making sure we're verifying on an annual basis a certain selection of practices for quality assurance. Next slide. So here's a slide that shows the practices that we're really looking to rely on in New York to meet our watershed goals. Nothing really out of the ordinary. You've seen all of these practices before. Next slide. Just a little bit, I won't take a lot of time. Nutrient management planning is a practice that we're trying to balance the nutrients that are going out, manure management primarily in the watershed. Next slide. Conservation planning is a key practice that we're looking to work with farms on. Next slide. Conservation tillage. Next slide. Continuous no-till, trying to reduce erosion and sediment loads by making sure we're adapting programs that are managing the soil resources. Next slide. Cover crops. Cover crops has been a big program that New York State DEC has been assisting us with funding. So we've been trying on a lot of different cover crop avenues, the traditional where you broadcast or even drill it in, which is in the top right there. We do have 2 interseeders that are operating in the watershed, one in New York and one in Pennsylvania, and there's a photo of that taking place in Chemung and Schuyler County. And then on the right-hand side is a photo of interseeding within a corn crop. Next slide. We've also supported application of cover crop seed by a helicopter in Delaware County. So we've received now 4 years of funding from New York State DEC to implement cover crops, and you can see the numbers have increased as we've moved throughout the program. And we had over 15,000 acres requested for funding, but we were only able to support this year about 7,500 acres. But the positive note is that the 15,000 acres were still implemented, even though we weren't able to cost share provide funding for all of those in our member counties. Next slide. So our cover crop program is we're trying to continue to increase cover crop acreage. So we do a reimbursement rate for new acres, and then we reduce that rate for any previously cost shared acres, because the way our program or our grant works is that even though it's an annual practice, we're trying to constantly increase our numbers and implementation. So we work hard on trying to make sure we really incentivize those new acres for farms. Next slide. Exclusion fence, nothing really new or exciting here, just trying to get livestock out of the stream and improve that stream corridor. Next slide. Prescribed grazing, lots of work can go into a rotational grazing plan, as you can see with this conservation plan map that's on the screen. Next slide. Precision feed management, that's a key one where we can actually reduce our load input. So we try to focus on that quite a bit here in the watershed. Next slide. Animal waste storage, pretty, a common practice that we see in our larger farms here in the watershed. Next slide. And then heavy use area or barnyard controls is another practice that we're looking to implement and address nutrient concerns on the farmstead. Next slide. So this is just a real quick 2020 progress for what we submitted to the Chesapeake Bay on work that was done throughout the watershed. I'm pleased to say I don't have numbers for 2019 to show you on this table, but our numbers are continuing to increase. So that's a really important note as we're trying to address those WIP loads. Those are our annual practices. The next slide will show you structural practices, which are increasing as well. All right, so on to the next one, which I believe is our buffer team. Yep, so next slide. So we identified early on when we started looking at buffers and trying to implement within the watershed that there was a lot of challenges. So the New York State, we had a riparian forest buffer task force group that started, and some of the challenges that we identified were concerns with funding, agency role and coordination, and trying to understand who's doing what out there in the watershed, also making it priorities for all staff and technical personnel in the watershed that buffers are important. Outreach capacity was something that was very lacking, as well as program implementation. Next slide. So we created a buffer work group within the coalition and said our goal was to basically get buffers on the ground. And how we're going to try to do this, we tried to provide tools to districts to implement buffers, again, fill those programmatic gaps, which we're known for with our projects, and then education and outreach. Next slide. So we did this by realizing and recognizing we really needed a coordinator to emphasize and focus on buffers in the watershed. Through the U.S. Forestry Service, we were fortunate enough to secure some funding in 2015 to bring on a watershed coordinator for buffers, which was Lydia Brinkley. She's been with us since then. And the U.S. Forestry Service has been a great supporter of building capacity in our buffer team and our buffer approach by continuing to provide us funding. The program focuses on leveraging funding and resources and then continuing to develop USC capacity in the buffer arena. Next slide. So as I mentioned, prescribed grazing is a practice that we use as an incentive to help get buffers on marginal pasture land. Here's some photos of implementing prescribed grazing practices, off-stream watering systems, installing fence, planting trees to get that riparian forest buffer in on those marginal pasture lands. Next slide. Here's an example of the coalition and the work that we've been doing in our buffer program since 2015, since we started the buffer program. The green is the USC buffer pilot program projects that we got implemented, and then the blue represents the USC water quality projects that we transported the buffer pilot program into, and as well as realizing, or the need for that was realizing that we wanted to implement additional buffers, and that meant we needed to provide additional incentives to landowners. So not only just looking at getting forested buffers in and planting trees, but realizing we had other components such as prescribed grazing, stream corridor management might be needed as well. Next slide. Madison County, this is just a photo of a buffer going into Madison County. Next slide. There's a project in Tioga County. This one was actually a project where we removed a berm, so we enhanced floodplain reconnection. We put in a riparian forest buffer planting, and then we also did a prescribed grazing project. So this is a really interesting project, a neat project, as it showcases all focus areas of the coalition and the work that we do. And all of the work was done by coalition staff. Next slide, please. Another program that's been a great filler for the buffer implementation has been our Trees for Tribbs program, which comes through New York State DEC. It allows us to do implementation on agricultural landscapes, but also rural landowners as well. Next slide. The program pays for materials, all the stakes, mat, tubing, and staples, as well as all the plants and the stock needed to do the implementation of the buffer. And then ultimately, the district or USC staff will implement that buffer on the property. Next slide. Those are some projects over the years with number of plants, number of projects, and then the plants per project only funded or implemented through Trees for Tribbs. Next slide. Here was an expired CRP contract. The landowner was interested in having a forested buffer, but not getting back into CRP. So we actually used the Trees for Tribbs program to plant some trees and get that buffer established for him. Next slide. Here's another project, Trees for Tribbs program. We installed the signs. You can see this buffer is set up for success. Next slide. Here's one at Hickory's Park. We also try to engage the Trees for Tribbs program with municipal facilities that might have parks or property along streams and implement practices there. So this is a project that we did with the town of Owego and Tioga County. We planted it in 2016. We received funding to steward and monitor this project for 3 years. I'm not going to show you the link today, but the links are in the PDF that I provided, and you guys can actually go and see a video of how that buffer has transformed in those 3 years, but it's been a great success. Next slide. Here's a project in Madison County that just talks about how long it does sometimes take to get a buffer implemented. This project has had 4 different plantings with 4 different funding sources to get this project implemented. Next slide is just some photos of the project implementation in 2016. Next slide is 2017, 2018, and then 2019, where we started doing monitoring and maintenance and additional plantings as needed to make sure the buffer was established. In 2019, we also, next slide, yeah, and there's the final product. Okay, next slide. So another project that we have funding through New York State DEC is we're doing a DEC Chesapeake Bay Buffer Protection Project, where we're actually purchasing easements on properties to have buffers maintained and kept in perpetuity, as well as we're purchasing some property and as well as just restoring buffers with this funding. This happens to be a project at Bird's Eye Hollow State Forest in Tioga County, where the forest area, stream corridor area, was devastated by the emerald ash borer. So we've gone in and removed all those dead species and are reforesting the riparian forest buffer there with plants that are in trees that are will now continue to be successful in place of the ash. Next slide. So as I mentioned, our goals were to implement buffers, fill gaps, and provide education. We've been doing that for the last 5 years. We continue to know that it's hard to get buffers on the ground. We work with ag and markets, state committee staff, and others to try to come up with new ideas and new ways to get projects done. But we also want to make sure we're continuing to support the funding that comes in the watershed through Crp by putting plans together and continuing to demonstrate that need. So we're continuing to focus on implementing buffers, maintaining those buffers, and making sure that they are established. And the new policy you guys created, where there's funding to help establishment, has been very useful to the coalition and their partners. And then also providing outreach tools, which I'll get to a little bit later on in the presentation. Next slide. All right, I'll try to keep moving so I don't take up too much of your guys' time. But the USC Stream Team, again, is based on member soil and water conservation districts that have staff with stream expertise, and then that staff is willing to share their time and resources and to move throughout the counties to provide support when we have flooding disasters, which we see way too often in this portion of the watershed. But we have a long history of integrating into local communities, and we are recognized as a capable resource, so that's really important. And again, the member counties are very critical in that recognition. Next slide. Here is just how we break down stream assistance in the watershed. We do evaluations, we'll assist with design, we'll ultimately look for funding opportunities to implement. We can implement through traditional programs, as well as we will even provide staff, or the wetland team will go out and do implementation projects in the stream corridors as well. And then again, education and outreach is a huge component of the stream team. Next slide. We do quality assurance. It's very critical to make sure, as you guys know, when you're doing these stream projects and working in the corridor, that you're going back and making sure that projects are being maintained and are withstanding some of these environmental disasters and flooding events that we have. So we want to make sure we're putting together a very good design package that's been reviewed, approved, and is going to meet, hopefully stand some of the test of time. Next slide. So some of the projects that we've done, we've had a lot of NIFLA funding to support stream corridor and riparian areas, mainly just doing not real hard structures in the stream, but doing some removal of material and reshaping and grading and get the proper dimensions of the stream. We've worked with ag and markets in the state committee on putting together a stream corridor assessment guide, which is utilized in the AEM program. We also do culvert assessments utilizing the North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative. We continue to offer and promote municipal and contractor emergency stream intervention training, as well as doing I-4 program, which is implementing watershed assessments as we move throughout the watershed that build capacity. Next slide. So some of our projects, I mentioned a little bit of the berm removal and reconnection of the channel to the floodplain. Again, design, workshops, trainings. We've been providing support to NRCS with engineering support in the watershed with a PE and an engineering technician to support EQIP implementation. We also are involved in the Chesapeake Stream Health Work Group. We do the verifications on stream work as well. We've been working and doing some habitat restoration with hellbenders in the watershed, and we also do some projects with DOT where we do some monitoring. Next slide. So just some guiding principles to watershed management that, you know, the watershed's a big area. It includes a lot of different individuals, a lot of different thoughts and processes, and we need to work with all of them to try to get implementation on the ground, to make good decisions and understand the best way to approach those stream corridors, which is always a challenge and leads for lots of work. Next slide. Here's a berm removal project. We have done since 2013, we've removed 32,989 linear feet of berm and the material associated with that, allowing for floodplain reconnection. Next slide.
1 second, Wendy, I just gotta block this. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so this is an example of a berm or removal project on Catatonic Creek. In the top left, you can see the gravel deposited. Typically after flood events, you know, a landowner will get in realizing there's a debris jam or something going on in the stream and that material needs to be removed, but don't have the resources to actually get it out of the floodplain. So it just gets piled along our streams. So the next photos are, you can see USC equipment on the bottom left, and then we're stabilizing that area, and then the grass that has grown as a result. So we really look to implement this and these berm removal projects in areas where we're not going to impact structures, and also work with willing landowners. Next slide. Here's a culvert project that we assessed and then came in and replaced 2 culverts. One culvert was for the local farm that actually needed access to across the stream for both their equipment and animals. And then we partnered with the local highway department and the USC staff to implement the lower section of culvert as well, which was for a town road. So we followed the regulations and designed this to meet the 1.25 times the bank full requirements. And we installed it by asking the local highway department as well as the coalition and district staff to engage in the project, and everybody learned some as we moved along, as this were some of the first projects that we did in this format. So next slide. We also do, there's some completed projects with the water moving through the system on the bottom. Next slide. We do lots of projects as well. This one was an EQIP-funded project in Delaware County where we put in bank riprap and stabilized an area. And then you can also see planted a buffer associated with that project. Next slide. Accomplishments to date for the stream team. I'm not going to read all the numbers, but lots of stream corridor assessed, as well as culvert assessment, watershed assessments done. Trainings have been a real big push, and then, you know, always looking to leverage funding to do implementation. Along with now we're really pushing to always have a buffer component with any of the stream work that the USC funds. Next slide. Some of our accomplishments were actually recognized. The USC Stream Team did win a New York State DEC Award for our emergency stream intervention program that we put together utilizing Delaware County's model. Next slide. Wetland team. The wetland team, you can go on to the next slide. Wetlands are area that we've been focusing on and working on since the beginning of the coalition. It was actually one of the primary teams that started the coalition, and kind of we mimicked some of our other teams after. It's an important component of the watershed. It's going to help with nutrient delivery as well as flooding to provide retention. So we're constantly losing wetlands in the watershed. So our goal is to help implement and restore those areas. Next slide. Based on the development of a centralized team and specialized skills, we do lots of projects throughout the watershed. This team is staffed primarily by the USC. They are Tioga County Soil and Water staff personnel, but they move throughout the watershed to implement projects. We have skilled operators working on heavy equipment, as you can see in some of the slides I showed you before. And then we make sure that we're always partnering with other county and federal agencies and land trusts to try to promote wetlands on every level. Next slide. So what do? We do everything from planning to mitigation to evaluations to delineations, actually implementing. So in short, we're doing everything wetlands, and the team's very good at it. Next slide. This is just a list of equipment that we've been able to purchase over the years to help support our wetland work. Next slide. And then just some examples of some of the projects we've done. This was with the Finger Lakes National Forest Program, where we've been putting vernal pools in with them. Next slide. The top photos are restoration sites that we actually created with project funding through either New York State DEC, the Water Quality Incentive Program, or our NIFLA funding, as well as then the bottom slide is we work in partnership with the Wetland Trust to actually protect sites that are already already have wetlands existing on them, and we're just looking to do protection. Next slide. We also create, with the water quality program, we've been doing a lot of wetland creation projects. This is a couple slides of vernal pools that have been constructed in conjunction with riparian forest buffers, as well as grazing practices. Next slide. We do wetland monitoring and mitigation. We do everything from the design to then implement, and then we monitor those projects once we've implemented them. Next slide. Here's a project just to show you some of the success that the USC wetland team has had. Here's a golf course that was purchased by the Wetland Trust, and then we worked to do design and implement that wetland project here. So next slide. This is 3 years after the site when we purchased it as a golf course, and we put in some ditch plugs, seeding, planting, and deer exclusion fence. Next slide. Now we're monitoring the site. It's been a very part of an in-loop view program that's in the watershed and has been touted by our partners, the Army Corps and New York State DEC, as a very successful in-loop fee project. Next slide. Focusing on education and outreach, our wetland team does a lot of that as well, engaging the youth in the watershed. Next slide. Here's just some numbers showing some wetland implementation work. So it's apparent that we really need to step up and continue to do implementation in the watershed in order to meet our Chesapeake Bay goals. Across the watershed, wetland numbers have been decreasing, not just in New York State, but all jurisdictions. Next slide. Here are our projects in the coalition watershed that we've worked on, some being the NLP program, others through grant funding and implementation done as a result. So a lot of projects. We've done a lot of projects in the last few years on state lands where we had funding to implement smaller vernal pool complexes. We just received some additional funding in the last year where we're going to expand our wetland restoration work again to private property and try to include in the wetland restoration work or wetland design work, flood attenuation aspects to these wetlands as well. Next slide. Hellbender restoration. One of the things I often get asked about, is that we do stream work, we do wetlands, we do buffers, and a lot of agricultural work, but do you guys really worry about other natural resources in the watershed? And so we've been partnering with some of the schools in the SUNY ESF and others, as well as TWT, to do hellbender rearing. We're actually rearing hellbenders at the golf course, the photo I showed you earlier. Restoration site, and then in Tioga County, we have been releasing them into the wild while providing them habitat as well. So that project is ongoing. Next slide. And trainings are very critical to wetlands. Our wetland team, our stream team, all of our teams actually, and buffers as well. Next slide. So we're always trying to provide training to staff and partners to implement projects. So this is kind of going to be where I wrap things up. So recently, we formed an outreach committee within the coalition, realizing that we really need to get the word out on the projects that we're doing within the watershed. So knowing this year with COVID and everything that's happening there, it's been a little bit of a more of a challenge. We've seen activities such as our Earth Week activities that we had scheduled all canceled, you know, because you can't have people in numbers over 10 and social distancing and all of that. So we've been trying to take a new approach. We put together a lot of videos. You guys can look at the links at another time. And if you want some direct links, they're also posted on our Facebook, so you can follow us there as well. But we put together some presentations and videos on stream cleanup, vernal pools and how to find those and what to look for, as well as tree planting to try to promote activities to get families outside and involved in Earth Week activities. Next slide, please. Watershed Wednesdays, we annually hold a watershed forum where we gather for a day, usually in the fall, to talk about projects, look at funding that's been happening, where we need to direct funding, and try to engage partners and educate during that day. Again, because of COVID, we had to rethink how we were going to reach out to partners and get the word out on projects that the coalition's been involved in. So we have put together Watershed Wednesdays. We ran a series of them in July and August that were fairly successful. It's only a half an hour time slot where we do a virtual presentation focusing on a project that was implemented either by a coalition member or possibly a partner. And then we, you know, a brief question and answer, but it gets some information out regarding projects that have been done. So far, we've seen pretty good success of all of the tapings, or we record all of the Watershed Wednesdays, and we provide them on our website. So if you're interested in seeing any past Watershed Wednesdays, you can go to the USC website, as well as we have additional activities coming up this month and through December. Next slide. Another way we've been trying to communicate and spread the word to both our partners and to our members is if we do not have a meeting, which we've been holding virtually, we try to distribute a newsletter on those off months to make sure we're getting out project spotlights and things that are happening, as well as funding opportunities that might be available for our members. So those are all on our website as well. Next slide. And so just to kind of wrap things up, lessons learned from working with, you know, the watershed for several years now is this work takes time, it takes money, it takes a lot of technical resources, but we have found that the voluntary approach is working for New York. We have learned through our Chesapeake Bay work that the two jurisdictions in the Bay program that had the strongest downward water quality trends, which includes New York and West Virginia, are both supporting projects on a voluntary basis. So it does show that enrollment in the AEM programs and others do work. And again, having those relationships at the local level has been key to our success. Next slide. We've also learned that there's no single program to fit what we need. So we really need to be thinking outside the box, and when we approach a site, thinking about all the tools in our toolbox. And then the next slide. Because we need to be flexible with the tools that we use and evaluate your program effectiveness to make sure you're moving forward and constantly making progress. We have the monitoring data and the model to evaluate the work that we're doing in the watershed, and we're constantly readjusting our work based on those numbers and where we are. We will continue to develop our own tools and approach to meet those local needs, but also keeping back in the back of our minds the regional issues as well. Next slide. So things to look forward, that we're looking forward to or continuing to work on. Strategic planning, we need to continue to position ourselves to meet those local needs and secure funding to do that. Engagement with local, state, and federal officials to make sure they understand what type of things, what's happening in the watershed and what implications that has to our agricultural community and others. We always have to be looking at emerging challenges such as the climate issues that we're facing. Science-based approaches is critical to the work that we do, and making sure we're making a resilient watershed in the work that we're doing. always looking to expand our partnerships and connections and looking for new grants. Next slide. We want to continue to work on communication and tools to engage partners and landowners and build on our virtual presence. Our annual retreat, we have opportunity to have frank conversations about our programming, effectiveness, unmet needs, and where to focus our attention for work and funding each year. And then we always want to make sure we're fostering that communication between our members and partners. And then last but not least, we want to continue to build knowledge, skills, expertise, equipment, and other resources for all our members and partners to address the local and regional needs in the watershed. Next slide. And I think that basically wraps up. Hopefully I didn't bore you guys too much, but if you want to learn more about the coalition, you can go to our website. As I mentioned, there's a lot of resources available on there. I've also included links in the presentation for you to go back and view if you want to see some of our videos and the work we've been doing on some of the projects, along with our outreach activities that we've been undertaking this year. And then if you have a chance, tune into one of our Watershed Wednesdays and see if maybe some of that, the topics might be of interest and helpful to your conservation-related work. So with that, I'll say thank you again for allowing me the time to present. I hope I didn't take too much time, and I guess if there's questions, I'll take those, or you can always email me if that is easier. Thank you.
Wendy, this is Dale. My first comment is, wow. I had, even though I'm chair of the committee, I had no idea the coalition was so in-depth and so broad, all the work being done. This presentation is an eye-opener.
Well,
I really want to thank you for bringing it.
Thank you. I do apologize again for the length, but like I said, I knew I had never spoke to the state committee before, so I thought, well, I kind of got to cover everything. So yeah. I think that's it.
It's a lot. I will start with questions, so everybody unmute your computers. I have one. How successful has the aerial cover crop seeding been, and for actually getting establishment? And have you seen variations in success year to year?
So we've only funded it 1 year. This year, due to COVID, they did not have any flights, and it's been done in Delaware County, Soil and Water Conservation District. So Larry would be a great resource for some specifics on that. They did come and present to us at our annual retreat and some of our other meetings last year regarding their success, and they saw some really good success and they were happy with it, so they were willing to put the money towards project implementation again this year. It just didn't work out with some of the constraints with COVID.
Because I think the potential for getting more cover crops on the ground, we could hit a lot more farms if we had a successful program like that, because in the fall farmers get so busy they can't do cover crops because they're harvesting everything else. So
yeah, and they did see, Dale, that they were actually seeding those when the corn was on, and enough seed would get down through the corn crop, such as like an interseeding, and would have growth and coverage once they took the crop off. So they found it very successful. They were looking at covering, I know last year when they implemented it, it was about $80 an acre to do the implementation. So it wasn't too far out of line with some of the other types of implementation for cover crops either. So.
Yeah, I think it's, I try to look into that, Brian, to find out if we can present more information like that out to the counties. That may be something to expand our cover crop ability to get covered. The farmers around here that aren't getting it covered are the ones that are very short on labor and don't have enough time to do the cover crops when they're harvesting. Any other questions, anyone?
I have one question, Dale. This is Brian Steinmiller. Wendy, thank you so much. Fantastic presentation. And I wish that it was at least 50 more slides, because there was so much information there and so many great projects. I do want to just go back to, I think, the cover crop program, if I could. I think it's really interesting that you're providing, you know, that higher rate reimbursement to the farmers for new cover crop acres, and the lower reimbursement rate for return participation. How have you found that to help in increasing adoption of cover crops. Have you seen a pretty good level of participation and interest, even with those farms that are receiving the lower rate after having, already implemented once and maybe receiving the higher rate? Can you give us any more information about, how that program with those rates are going?
So it's probably a little bit of a mixed bag, and across the watershed, you'd probably get some different responses. So what we do is, because we have limited resources, the limited funding, and we're trying to meet some goals with the watershed implementation plan, is that we'll pay the districts at those rates that they come in and they let us know every year how much implementation they think they can get done for that new versus kind of the continued acreage concept. Then once we fund them, the districts have the ability to pay out as they see fit for those practices. They don't have to pay at the rate that we provided them. We just give them essentially a lump sum and meet the deliverables of the acres. So I know some districts have stuck with the rates that we've contracted with them, so around that 70 and the lower value cost share for those that are continued. Other districts pay at just a flat rate, knowing it's an annual practice, and every year you need the same amount of money to implement those practices. So it's really a mixed bag, but we try to provide flexibility as much as we can with the funding, so letting them decide how best to implement it in the county. The member county is the way we've chosen to take that program. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. Any other questions?
I forgot. I have one more question. Forgot to unmute it. Do you know the cost, Wendy, to create the wetlands at the golf course?
Right, not off the top of my head, but I could definitely get you that information. Like a per acre cost. Is that what you're looking at?
Yes.
Yep, I could get you that. The vernal pool cost, we see, the smaller projects, obviously, a lot less intensive. So the cost is significantly less than doing that particular project. And that project we had to meet, as it was under the in lieu fee program, we had to meet certain requirements of both the Corps and New York State DEC requirements with that program. So it's a lot higher level of planning and implementation, and then monitoring of those sites.
Excellent.
But I can get you that.
Okay, appreciate it. Anyone have other questions? I want to thank you again, Wendy. That was very educational and eye-opening.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
We will move on. We're going to Ag Non-Point Source, Bethany and Jason.
Okay, Jason, you want to kick us off with the dashboard?
Sure. Get going. So as of November 2020, 808 contracts have been completed, totaling $124.9 million of state funding match. This is an increase of 8 contracts since last month and 54 contracts since this time last year. There are currently 181 active contracts, totaling $65.1 million of state funding match. 36 contracts have been canceled during the life of the program, and currently no contracts pending. The table below presents the status of the recent rounds. Rounds 19 and 20 are approaching their end, just with 1 active contract each. So that's good news that they're coming to an end, and I'll keep everyone posted when we've completed them. So that's it for the dashboard.
Thanks, Jason. I will also add, at our meeting last month, I reported that we're going to have a rather large number of contracts that will be expiring at the end of this year. I have recently sent out letters to all districts that have not already requested a time extension, just as a reminder, just to let them know that their contracts will be expiring at the end of December. And there is a 60-day window after that end date that they have to submit a final closeout packet. So those letters did go out, but as a result of that, we have a number of time extension amendments for this month, and I'm also anticipating there being a few that come in for our meeting in December as well. I'll just jump right in here. The first two amendments that you see on the list that is on the screen right now are staff approved amendments that do not require approval from the state committee, but are presented here just for your information. So we received a budget change request from Erie County for a round 23 contract. That budget change did not meet the threshold to require a formal contract amendment. So Victor DiGiacomo in Region 1 was able to approve that budget change. We also received a landowner change from Yates County for a round 25 contract. And that farm has changed ownership basically from a father to a daughter. So there will be no change in the scope of work on that project. It was just a simple change of ownership that was approved by PJ Emmerich, the Region 2 AEA for that district. So now we will get into the amendments that require state committee approval. And there are 12 time extension requests and 1 formal budget change request. So all of the amendment packets were sent out to the voting members in advance of this meeting for your review. So the first amendment on the list is from Cattaraugus County for a round 22 project. They are looking to extend their contract for 1 year for a new end date of December 31st, 2021. The reason for their request is highlighted here in the summary report. This time extension amendment was or is supported by Victor DiGiacomo, Region 1 AEA, and referred to the state committee.
Questions, anyone? Motion approved.
So moved.
Second? Moved and approved. Go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved. Next.
All right, so the next one is from Chautauqua County for a round 23 project. The current end date on that contract is December 31st of this year, and they're looking to extend it 1 year to December 31st of 2021. The reason for their request is highlighted here on the summary sheet, and this has been reviewed by Victor DiGiacomo, and he also supports this request, but refers to the state committee.
Questions, anyone? Motion approved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
All right, the next request is also from Chautauqua County for a second round 23 contract that ends at the end of this year. They're looking to extend it 1 year to the end of 2021. The reason is highlighted here on the summary report, and Victor DiGiacomo supports this request, but refers to the state committee.
Questions, anyone? Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Move to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
Okay, the next one comes to us from Genesee County Soil and Water Conservation District for a round 23 project that is scheduled to end December 31st of 2020. They also are looking to extend this contract for 1 year for a new end date of December 31st, 2021. They have highlighted their reason here on the summary report, and this request has been reviewed and is supported by Victor DiGiacomo, Region 1 AEA, and referred to the State Committee.
Questions, anyone? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Next.
All right, the next time extension is from Wayne County for a round 21 project that is set to expire at the end of this year. They are looking to extend it to December 31st of next year for the reasons that are listed on the summary report. This amendment has been reviewed by Victor DiGiacomo, Region 1 AEA, and is supported by him, but referred to the State Committee. And I will just point out here for the committee that early last year in 2019, we approved this project saw a landowner change as well as a BMP change. So that new landowner is working on getting the projects off the ground, but needs that additional time to do so.
Questions, anyone? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is from Wyoming County for a round 21 project that is set to end on December 1st of 2020, and they are looking to extend it a year, which for a new end date of December 1st, 2021. The reason for the request is highlighted here on the summary report. This extension request has been reviewed by Victor DiGiacomo, Region 1 AEA, and is supported by him, but referred to the State Committee.
Questions, anyone? Excuse me. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
we'll go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you.
Okay, the next extension request, and this is the last one for Region 1, is from Wyoming County for a round 21 project. Also has a current end date of December 1st of this year, and they are looking to extend it for 1 year for a new end date of December 1st, 2021. We've highlighted the reason for the request here, and this has been reviewed by Victor DiGiacomo and is supported by him, but referred to the State Committee.
Questions, anyone? And motion, please.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
we'll go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're moving on to Region 2, and we only have one time extension request from that region this month. That is from Cortland County for a round 23 project that is set to end on December 31st of this year. They are also looking to extend this contract for 1 year to a new end date of December 31st, 2021. The reason for the request is highlighted here on the summary sheet. And PJ Emmerich, the Region 2 AEA, supports this request, but refers to the State Committee.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved.
All right, so that is our only one from Region 2. So moving on to the requests from Region 3. Our first is from Tioga County Soil and Water Conservation District for a round 22 contract set to expire at the end of this year, and they are looking or requesting a 1-year time extension for a new end date of December 31st, 2021. Scott Fickbaum, Region 3 AEA, excuse me, supports this request but refers to the state committee.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So the next time extension request also comes from Otsego County for a another round 22 contract that is set to expire at the end of this year. They are requesting a 1-year time extension for a new end date of December 31st, 2021. This request has been reviewed and is supported by Scott Fickbaum, Region 3 AEA, but referred to the state committee.
Questions, anyone? Motion, please.
Remove.
Second.
Second.
Voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you.
Okay. And our last time extension request, it was submitted by Schoharie County Soil and Water Conservation District for a round 23 contract that will be expiring at the end of this year. And they are also requesting a 1-year time extension for a new end date of December 31st, 2021. The reason for their request is highlighted here in the summary sheet. This extension request was reviewed and is supported by Scott Fickbaum, Region 3 AEA, but referred to the state committee.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you.
All right, and our last amendment that requires state voting member approval is submitted by Franklin County Soil and Water Conservation District for a round 25 contract. They are requesting a budget change that is in excess of 10% of the total contract amount. And because it met that threshold, we need to get formal approval from the state committee for them to change their budget. Their proposed change is highlighted here on the summary sheet. And this request has been reviewed and is supported by Ryan Cunningham, Region 4 AEA, but referred to the state committee.
Questions, comments? Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Voting. Erica?
Aye.
Darren?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for the approval of all of those amendments. I appreciate your time. That is all I have today for the Ag Non-Point Source program, unless there are any questions out there.
The only thing I'm concerned about, Brian, we're doing 2 time extensions. If there's a problem next year, can 3 time extensions be done? That's going to be the issue with some of these.
That certainly could be. You know, we do have some experience with executing time extensions with the Comptroller's Office due to extenuating circumstances. So, you know, there's no indication right now that they would not be amenable to approving extensions again next year. But, you know, we won't know until we we get to that point.
Exactly. Okay. Plans of work, Brian?
Sure. Thanks, Dale. I want to thank all the districts for getting their annual plans of work into the regional coordinators by the November 1st deadline. I'm happy to report that all districts did meet that deadline, and I want to just also turn it over to State Committee regional coordinators, just say a few words about their review of annual plans of work this particular year, a year that has obviously been challenging, and 2021 also a year with some uncertainties, and just what we've found and how we've been able to assist. So any regional coordinators online like to say a few words about the annual plans of work this year?
Yeah, Brian, thank you. This is PJ. Just a couple things. In Region 2, one of the things that I encouraged a lot of the districts in my region to look at was just having some statements on COVID-19, specifically related to continuity of operations, things like that, and also related to all of the information in the annual plans of work. Just something to acknowledge that COVID is going to be ever-changing, and that as a result, some things may change or be modified slightly in that annual plan of work. And all of my districts did reference that, and so I feel comfortable with that. And the other thing I noticed, I thought, especially in my region, that is consistent with every other year as well, but also included information on the collaborative partnerships between the districts and many of the watershed groups, the municipal watershed groups, and even some of the citizens watershed groups. So I thought that was a very positive thing that continued on into 2021 annual plans of work as well. So other than that, I can honestly say thank you to all my districts for putting such time and effort in to such outstanding annual plans of work. And it's going to be a challenging year, but I think based on everything that I've seen, a lot of those plans of work cover just about everything that those districts do and then some. So I appreciate the opportunity to take a look at them and provide comments back.
Thank you, PJ.
I'll also add here, sorry, I'll also add to PJ's comments here that, at the end of the day, what we're looking for, is a useful tool for the districts, to help them with their, I'd say, medium range planning and workload analysis. And our reviews typically they include a quick review for the required areas, the required components of the plan, to include water quality, education and outreach, district operations, things like that. But at the end of the day, we're also taking a deep dive in these plans of work to reduce risk for the districts and how they assess liabilities and the tools that they have at the local level to minimize those risks that they might encounter throughout the year. Going into the review for 2021, I think the AAs, encountered it with an understanding that there's a great level of fiscal and operational uncertainty going into this year. At this time, we kind of give the message to districts that, with a grain of salt, kind of give us your best shot at what you plan to do in 21 with that uncertainty. And they did a great job throughout the state, especially in Region 1. I had no complaints about the plans of work that I reviewed. They look great this year, and I'm hopeful that these documents will prove to be useful documents in 2021 and guide them through the next year.
Thank you, PJ. Anything else?
Yeah, this is Ryan of the Region 4 in the North Country. I would agree with what my colleagues just said there for the annual reports. I think it's important too to know that a lot of the plans that came through, there's still a lot of unknowns with state aid, some of the delays with grants, but I still see a lot of strong general programming just as far as the flagship programs like AEM and a lot of the grant programs that we have, even with some of the delays. There's still going to be a lot of collaboration and partnerships and projects, but there's some flexibility there with some of the Part C funding and state aid to see if things do fall apart with some of the plans, there are backup plans in place for programs to be accomplished next year. And I think it's important to remember too that we started 2020 in a strong year. We had a big pot of money for state aid, a lot of grant programs, a lot of new staff in several of these counties, and things kind of fell apart right at the beginning of the season in March. So what that meant was a lot of planning happened on the fly this spring. Very quickly, the districts had to decide on things like hiring summer interns, what to do with envirothons. flexible schedules and working remote, tree sales. So a lot of credit to districts for coming up with those plans at a moment's notice and kind of turning this year successful despite all the roadblocks. So moving into 2021, I think having that advantage of being able to plan for some of these unknowns, giving them a step up, and I'm sure we'll see some great things coming in 2021.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that.
Hey, Brian, I'll
Scott,
chime
Ben?
in for, Region 3. I think it's like a continuation of a lot of good work. You know, this is an annual thing that we've been on them for a few years about. So in a lot of cases, they're perfecting really good annual plans of work. You know, they really get the incorporating the language for board and staff responsibilities that need to be done, you know, vis-a-vis our performance measures, but other things. And I guess in review of all the ones in Region 3, I was impressed by a few things. One is the anticipation of a pretty robust workload. You know, despite, I think, the challenges, budget, COVID, et cetera, districts are carrying on or intend to do a lot of work. And then when you look at that work, aside from agriculture, which there is an abundance of, but kind of reflective of Wendy's presentation, you see a lot of work in stream bank stabilization, water quality monitoring, invasive species, stormwater work. The districts play the lead agency in a lot of efforts, local organizations and whatnot. So, you know, it really comes through. There's a strength there. And I also, like Vic said, I didn't have any problem with any of the plans of work that I saw. But, you know, just really interesting to go through and then see the differences in districts as you go from county to county. So really good stuff.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Ben, anything you'd like to add?
Can you hear me, Brian?
Oh, there you are. Yep, loud and clear.
Hey. All right. No, a lot of the same things as the other guys said for Region 5. Definitely some differences from county to county of how much detail they put in there regarding COVID. Some of them, it's just a simple line item about following new COVID policies and procedures. Other ones were kind of including their whole new process for their different programs, whether it's more in-house procedures or dealing with the public with their DEC programs and things like that. But a lot of it was just kind of part of the course for past years, I think, and just updating things from last year to this year and their new programs, new grant contracts. Because as Scott just said, I think a lot of it is everybody's moving forward the best they can and really as fast as they can with a lot of the programs and contracts, and not much really slowed down overall. So everything really looked great. And provide what feedback I could to Region 5, but overall, things were good.
Yes, thank you, Ben. Thank you all. Thank you, Dale, for just a few minutes to talk about these plans of work, because they really are kind of the embodiment of what districts have been doing in 2020, how they had to adapt and improvise and overcome a lot of the challenges, and it really gave us an opportunity to work with districts again for planning in 2021. So with that, Dale, I'm happy to announce that all but 3 district annual plans of work have been reviewed, approved by their boards, and approved by our AEAs. I am going to read off those plans of work that are ready for committee approval, and then we'll entertain a motion. Alphabetically, the following annual plans of work have been approved by the AEAs, recommended approval to the committee. Albany, Allegheny, Broome, Cattaraugus, Tioga, Chautauqua, Chemung, Shenango, Clinton, Columbia, Portland, Delaware, Dutchess, Erie, Essex, Franklin, Fulton, Greene, Hamilton, Herkimer, Jefferson, Lewis, Livingston, Madison, Monroe, Montgomery, New York City, Niagara, Oneida, Onondaga, Ontario, Orange, Orleans, Oswego, Otsego, Putnam, Rensselaer, Rockland, St. Lawrence, Saratoga, Schenectady, Schoharie, Schuyler, Seneca, Steuben, Suffolk, Sullivan, Tioga, Tompkins, Warren, Washington, Wayne, Westchester, Wyoming, and Yates County Soil and Water Districts.
Yeah, gotta unmute my phone, my computer. Motion approved, please.
I'm glad I wasn't muted. Thanks.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Voting, Erica,
Aye.
Darren,
Aye.
plans of work are approved. Thank you, Brian.
Great, thank you. So in December, the remaining 3 will be approved, and all 3 of those have been reviewed already and just pending board approval. So, thank you.
I'm gonna do the next meeting date before we go to the advisory reports because Darren has another call at noon in case they run longer. So.
Okay.
It should be scheduled for December 15th. What's everybody think?
That is the 3rd Tuesday.
That looks good on my end, Dale.
Looks good on my end for Dale.
Thanks, Dave. Darren, what do you think?
Yeah, it looks good for me.
Great. December 15th.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. It will be a WebEx meeting. So thank you for that.
Okay, advisory reports, we'll do voting members first. I'll call out each one and then we'll move to Brian and he'll go through everyone else. Erica, anything to report?
Sure, I just wanted to mention a few events that AFT is putting together or helping to coordinate over the next couple of months. 2 are actually this week, so now's the time to jump on board. But the first one is a virtual event for our Women for the Land program. I think I mentioned this in our last meeting. It'll be a workshop really targeted to female farmers or non-operating landowners who are women to better understand soil health management. So that again is virtual. That's this Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. And then Thursday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. we're partnering with Pace Law School and New York Ag Mediation on a farm leasing and conservation workshop targeted to kind of the legal profession, but is open to anyone, and with the kind of idea of how to work with non-operating landowners to better implement conservation practices on their land. And I know, I forget exactly who is presenting from the conservation district there, but we have someone from Dutchess County Soil and Water Conservation District who will be presenting among some others as well. So that's on Thursday. It's most of the day, 10 a.m. to 3. And then we're in the planning process and helping to support the development of the program for the Western New York Soil Health Alliance meeting on December 16th. So for the first 2, I have links that I'll drop into the chat if anyone's interested, but I don't think we have a link yet for the one on December 16th. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Darren, anything?
Not much really, just New York Farm Bureau, our annual meeting's coming up December 7th or 8th, something like that. And that's going to be all virtual, so we're just trying to work through all the issues with doing that. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. Dave, anything to report?
Not really, except I'm going to do something about a computer, I hope.
We do too.
The internet. It's the only thing that doesn't work. Everything else works.
Okay, Brian, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Advisory member reports, starting with Ag and Markets, Tim Sweeney.
Nothing to report, Brian.
Okay, thanks, Tim. TDEA, Chaz?
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself.
No worries.
Everybody. So we
Hello.
I know, sorry. Good meeting. Thank you, everybody. Great job, Wendy, for sure. We had a CDA meeting last week, and our big decision at that meeting was that we are going to hold the 2021 Water Quality Symposium virtually. With everything going on, I know everybody's not surprised. So we are working on figuring out class schedules, what classes are going to stay, what ones don't necessarily work virtually, and how we're going to do our annual meeting and awards, and whether it'll be an afternoon or an evening event. So we'll keep you all posted. We are still hoping to hold somewhat of a bucket raffle silent auction. However, we're working through details and logistics on that one. What that also means is that we have reserved the hotel. We've shifted our reservations from 2021 to 2022. So that means we'll definitely be in Syracuse in March of 2022 and the second week, not the week of the 7th, but the following week. So they're going to hold our rates for us, but that way it did not have any fees for canceling. We're also looking into a hosting service to help facilitate the meetings and whatnot. So we'll keep you all posted on that. Our next CDA meeting will be in January. We had an audit and have that completed, and our results were great. There was no yellow or red flags, which is fantastic. The only things they recommended were a few policies, which we've already completed and approved at our meeting last week. So they've made note of that in our audit. The other big thing that I have is that as of every year, we re-elect executive board positions. And so we're looking for people to run as president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and at large. As always, we encourage some competition. And I know that we definitely need a treasurer and a secretary for sure. So that's the biggest thing that we have. If you have any other questions, I'll entertain those now.
Thank you, Chaz. More a comment than a question, but please make sure that if there's anything that committee can do to help, committee staff, I know that we're actively involved in helping to plan the symposium as you switch to a virtual. Please let us know what we can do to help. Encouraged by the thought of having a meeting host service, that's probably the way to go as opposed to many different virtual platforms. But
yep.
Yeah, if there's anything that we could do, let us know.
Yeah, we will definitely be in touch with Greg. I hear he's got some plans and ideas on that. So I'm hoping to see what we can do.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think we're in pretty good shape. We are continuing to work on advancing our 4-hour class also. And Ryan and PJ and I have been working on an app for evaluating local roads for a statewide options. Stay tuned on the municipal subcommittee for that.
Excellent. Thank you. Anything else, Jess?
No, I think that's plenty. I apologize. I am at home with the kid and an 8-week-old puppy. So, you know.
You sound completely focused and locked on. Locked in.
Fantastic, because they knocked a lot of stuff down in the middle of that. So we're doing okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you. DEC. Anything to report? Julie, Sarah, or Asim? Okay. I believe Stephanie from DOS had to jump off, but in case she's back, DOS, anything to report?
Okay, Department of Health, Paul?
Yes, hi, Brian. First of all, I'd like to start off with a comment regarding using helicopters for cover crop seeding. Yeah, there's very limited data on it, at least in Delaware County. And they did get very good growth the year they did it. You know, I would like to see a much larger database to judge the effectiveness of it. I know that particular year that they did the cover crops with a helicopter, that September, you know, was a nice, normal sort of rainy September, which I'm sure makes a big difference since the seed is just lying on the ground like that. If you had a really dry September, I can't imagine you'd get any germination at all. So, but nonetheless, it's just a very limited data set. As far as reports go, big changes at the Watershed Agricultural Council. The executive director and the board director both resigned about roughly 10 days ago. And the issue is that the state controller, not the state controller, this New York City controller has really for several years been doing extensive audits of all New York City's funds and what they're being spent on. So the audit of the WAC program, Watershed Agricultural Program, was not directed at them per se. You know, it's just all the programs are getting audited. And they've had real issues with, you know, going back about a year or so of, you know, not very good bookkeeping, frankly. And so they have not been reimbursed by the city for about a year. And so they're essentially out of money right now. And people with New York City Department of Environmental Protection have been working with them. I mean, I see this as sort of the fault of WAC and also the fault of DEP in the sense that the filtration avoidance determination is dependent on the city reaching certain goals every year. And so the city's oversight of WAC probably should have been a bit more focused, let's say. So anyway, they're in the midst of this. Hopefully it gets straightened out soon. Like I said, it's been going on for about a year and things aren't straightened out yet. So hopefully we're nearing the end of that. So that's the big news from Delaware County.
Oh, well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. And also appreciate your comment on the cover crop application. I know there are only a couple of other instances around the state where helicopters have been used, and I think the results are mixed. I appreciate that. Okay. I did see Brian Rom's name on the computer. I'm sorry I've missed you during roll call this morning. Brian, Cals, anything to report?
Hey, Brian. No worries. I had to jump on late. So I guess the only thing I'll pass on is something that maybe it was also sent down in other ways, but I'm just pasting something in the chat on spotted lanternfly, particularly in the Finger Lakes region that might be of concern for some folks. I just kind of note that they highlight impacts on vineyards and stuff. So that's just some pass through from somebody, the director of the Northeast Integrated Pest Management Center. You can follow up with Deb Grantham or myself if you have questions. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for that, Brian. I know that the department has been tracking movement of spotted lanternfly for some time now, and has been able to provide some information out to districts, and I appreciate that. We'll certainly make note of that in the minutes and those links as well. Thank you. All right, did anybody from Cornell Cooperative Extension join us? Okay. Steve, Shaw, ESF, anything to report?
Nope, nothing new, Brian.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Steve. Scott, anything from NYACD to report?
Nothing to report at this time.
All right, thank you. Okay, now it's time for staff reports. I'm not going to call on each one of you, but if you have anything to report, please go ahead, take your phone off mute, and go ahead and report.
Hi, this is Jason. Last reminder for our cover crop adoption survey. We're looking for responses from Friday, and so far we've had 17 responses, so thanks to everyone that gave us feedback. So thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for that, Jason. And you know, certainly if there are anybody on the line that intends to provide a response, please do so. More information, bigger data set we have, the better the information will be, and be able to make some program decisions based on that. So appreciate that. And Jason, thank you so much for all of your hard work developing that survey, coordinating all the feedback that you've gotten so far.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, I just add for Crp, the state's and the committee's involvement for Crp, we did get the instructions from FSA regarding the new reporting process, which is going to be an online sort of data entry thing. Jason's been helping me a lot with putting that together, and put out a request from districts and partners for success stories, suggestions to improve the program, and identification of any challenges that people know about that keep the program from operating as good as it could be. It's all going very well, and I think we'll probably have the report done before the December 31st deadline. But then just to plant the seed now, I'd like to follow up perhaps with a report to the committee, you know, a summary of the report to the committee at some point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Anybody else?
Hey, Brian, it's Ben. Just want to report that for the 2021 State Aid to Districts Part B, all the project requests were submitted on time. There was 64 projects that were proposed. So there's 6 districts that are actually proposing to implement 2 projects with their money. The approval memo went out to all the districts on November 9th, and I've received all of the claim for payments except for 5 from the districts. So once those are in, I will get those all down to fiscal for payment. That's it.
Great, thank you, Ben. Appreciate that. I look forward to reviewing those project proposals. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much, advisory members. Thank you, staff, for those reports. I will just finish the staff reports by quickly letting folks know that the Agriculture and Forestry Advisory Panel continues to meet. We're having our 5th meeting tomorrow. Over the last week, we had a number of subgroup team meetings. There's a diverse set of interests on our panel, dealing with both agriculture and forestry, and certainly a lot of parallel and you know, complementary issues between those 2 distinct sectors. So we broke off into teams to get more into the weeds on discussions and recommendations that will help inform the state scoping plan. Tomorrow's meeting will be a report out of those subgroup teams, and we'll be preparing Commissioner Ball to present those draft recommendation concepts to the full Climate Action Council in next week's meeting, which is scheduled for November 24th. And from there, we'll continue to add detail to the recommendations and work with our partners across different state agencies to help develop a state scoping plan. So a lot of work is going into it. A lot of work has gone into it and continues. And special thanks again to Amanda Barber, who is your district representative on this panel. Is just doing a phenomenal job providing input to the panel on all the projects and areas that intersect with district work. Okay. Dale, at this time, I'd like to invite any Conservation District partner on the line or any member from the public to take their phone off mute, address the committee, ask questions, or provide comment.
Quiet crowd.
Okay. I think that is a long enough pause. Again, I thank everybody for participating today. Thank Wendy for a fantastic presentation. And if we couldn't get out in the field this fall to actually see conservation work on the ground, I think today's presentation was the next best thing. So thank you, Wendy, for providing that valuable information to us today.
Yeah, I would hope in a year we're able to remove again like we used to be able to, but see some of these great projects would be fun. Does anybody have anything else you want to bring up before we adjourn? Well, everybody have a very good Thanksgiving, all 10 of you. And we will see everybody the next meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanksgiving.
See you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.